It's a war NATO forces thought they were almost done with. But now they are ramping it back up.
The current level is around 13,000. The new level will be around 16,000. They will train, assist and advise. And in particular, we are focusing on training the Afghan Special Operation Forces, which have proven so key in the fight against the insurgents, the terrorists, the Taliban.
The boost comes despite the reluctance of alliance members like Germany to join the mission. Still, the alliance agreed to support President Donald Trump's decision to raise US soldiers in Afghanistan by 10,000. There are currently 11,000 US soldiers in Afghanistan. They mostly provide backup to the 350,000 members of the Afghan National Army. That's in the form of US air power and special forces support. That's in contrast to the 13,000 NATO soldiers who are engaged in non-combat roles. The increase will raise the total strength of foreign soldiers to 37,000, which is still far less than the 100,000 combat soldiers deployed in 2011. That surge targeted the Taliban militants who had taken over large parts of the country and was able to take back those areas. But the Afghan National Army has since failed to hold them. Key areas across Afghanistan continue to fall to the Taliban. And the emergence of Daesh has put greater pressure on Afghan forces. They say they're increasingly under siege and need international help. Top US military leaders agree.
We're not winning in Afghanistan right now, and we will correct this as soon as possible. I believe the three things we are asking for stand on their own merit, however, as we look more broadly at the protection of the country.
It's in line with that advice that President Trump now has a more proactive Afghan policy. It's also put pressure on NATO to do more. But will their latest moves be enough to combat the growing strength of the Taliban and of Daesh in Afghanistan? Shoaib Hassan, The Newsmakers.
Well, I'm joined now from Washington by the former Afghan Minister of Commerce and Industry, Anwarul Haq Ahadi. Sir, thank you very much for joining us on The Newsmakers. I'm not going to call it a troop surge, but I guess it's an injection of 3,000 NATO forces. Are they going to be making a difference at all?
I'm not sure that the number itself would make really that much difference. I think the intentions or the policy whereby the United States committed itself not to withdraw forces before security situations are satisfactory, I think that would make a difference. I think the perception was that, and I think that perception was supported by some experts, that without strong international support, there was the danger of the Afghan state collapsing the way it collapsed in the 1990s, and I think that would have been catastrophic for everyone involved. But with the new commitment from the United States and I would say NATO, I think that the Afghan state has a strong chance of survival and and this move would make a difference.
Yeah, and you say good intentions and you say commitment, and I'm sorry to fixate on numbers, but there was a time when there were good intentions and a lot of commitment, plus more than 100,000 troops trying to do what the troops are doing right now, yet they failed. The Taliban only grew, and now they have almost half the country. So what makes you think that just a fraction of that amount of troops are going to turn the tide this time around and prevent the collapse of the Afghan state?
I don't think that the additional forces will enable the Afghan government and NATO forces really to crush the Taliban. I think that objective is to make them realize that probably the Taliban, that they cannot win either, and that should facilitate the way for a political settlement. In President Trump's announcement of the new strategy, he barely mentioned the political settlement, but subsequently Secretary Tillerson and also General Nicholson, I think as late as just a few days ago, he mentioned it, that the objective is to have political settlement. And I think that new intention and that commitment, well, rationally speaking, should persuade the other side that perhaps they cannot win either. I'm not saying that with 3,000 additional forces that the Afghan side or the government side or the NATO side would win, but I think that the other side would realize that they're not going to win either.
Well, but doing the maths and looking at the timeline of 16 years, so they were expelled from power, and then they wait it out. They fight an insurgency, and over a period of 16 years, despite tens of thousands and even more than 100,000 troops from all over the world, led by the world's greatest superpower, trying to stop them, they incrementally, town by town, city by city, province by province, gain more and more influence. If they're willing to wait it out, then you might have a political settlement, but it will be on their terms, right? So goodbye democracy, goodbye women's rights, goodbye average human rights for Afghans, because the Taliban will be back in town, right?
Well, I hope not. I hope not. I think that there will have to be some concessions made from the government side, from the international coalition's side. But I hope it's not goodbye to democracy, human rights, and women's rights. As a matter of fact, I have had a chance to talk with Taliban, and they are not insisting on not holding elections or not allowing women to go to school or to work. I think there is some change on their side as well. I think the problem in the past few years has been that the other side, the Taliban side, probably they thought that they can win, that they can wait for a little bit longer. If the U.S. were to withdraw its forces in 2014, 2016, then they could have prevailed. With the new strategy, I'm saying that I think they'll have a new calculation of the situation, and I hope that they'll be led to the conclusions that perhaps a political solution is in the best interest of everyone involved. As I said, I'll repeat this, I'm not sure that the government or the international forces will prevail militarily completely, especially with the entrance of new actors such as Iran support for Taliban, Russia's support for Taliban, and the old Pakistan support for Taliban. They can prolong this war. But on the other hand, if they don't have any hope of winning, it would be quite irrational on their part as well to prolong this war. Right now, they are suffering as well. Their casualties have increased. I admit that the casualty on the part of the government, that has increased too, but from the other side, their casualties are increasing as well.
You say that the Russians, the Iranians, and the Pakistanis are supporting the Taliban. If they're watching this, what's your message to them?
Well, I hope that, they all identify as to what is it exactly that they want in Afghanistan. I mean, if the Russian side, if their concern is to prevent Daesh, I think the best way to prevent the spillover of Daesh into Central Asia would be to have a stable Afghanistan. If the Iranians also, if they are concerned with Daesh, I think a stable Afghanistan would help them as well. And we need to ask Pakistan really to make serious decisions as to what is the critical demands that they would like to make. Unfortunately, I mean, as I said earlier, there was a bare mention of the political solution in President Trump's statements, and the subsequent statements, even though they indicate greater willingness to engage in political dialogue, there has been no principles of political dialogue have been identified as to what are the issue and what can be done. I can see that probably it's a little bit early for the participants, for the official participants to declare their position, but at least the non-governmental institutions, the intellectuals, they should have peace talk as to what should be the principles of negotiations. What are the do's and don'ts, what are the red lines for various sides, and what are the common factors. As I said earlier, that if the Taliban do not insist on preventing girls from going to school, if they do not insist on women have the right to participate in political process as well as to have a job, and if they don't, if they allow elections, then I think, we could make some progress in this regard. I think what's needed is really to have this kind of discussion, if not directly between the official participants, at least between the non-official actors, to identify these issues and to determine as to what are the deadlines and where we can agree with each other.
Very finally, do you trust Ashraf Ghani's leadership?
I don't, unfortunately. I don't think he has handled the peace process very well. I don't think he's handling the military situation very well. I'm supportive of the fact that he has, close coordination of military efforts with the international community, with NATO. But I think one of the major problems is that he is so unpopular. His government is highly ineffective. It's a highly dishonest government. Its legitimacy is seriously under question. And I'm not sure he's really committed to clean politics, to clean elections, and therefore we have to live with him for another 15, 16 months. But I hope that he will not stay in power beyond that, and I hope that there will be a more sincere leadership that can handle the process well as that have a greater commitment to peace, but at the same time have strong values that will have some red lines that which will not be violated by that administration. I don't believe that Dr. Ghani is that kind of a person.
Okay, Anwar al-Haq Ahadi, it's been a pleasure talking to you on the Newsmakers. I thank you very much for joining us.